From Microbe TV, this is Office Hours for Wednesday, March 12th, 2025. I'm Vincent Racaniello, and welcome to your viral corner of the internet. I'm here tonight. The trains ran on time. Sorry about last week's, folks. I was just sitting in Penn Station with the clock moving past that time where I could make it. And even I didn't get home until after 9 p.m. here. And so you don't know when you're going to get here. So you can't say, let's do it at this time, that time. I thought, best thing is to cancel. Tonight the trains were late, but I made it here in time. Nonetheless, welcome everyone. I want to welcome our moderators tonight. We have Frank in the house. We have Vanity Nutrition. We have Tom Steinberg from Western Oregon. Thank you for joining us tonight and Les Fabi is here. Thanks for joining and keeping it civilized. We're going to answer your questions. We're going to chat as usual. And we're also going to have a very mini lecture on hantaviruses suggested by Les. Thanks for that. If you want to know what's going on with Gene Hackman and his wife, yeah, I'm going to tell you because it's a viral story and a sordid one. It's unfortunate, right? But it does involve viruses and other things. Tell me where you're from. We will shout you out. Rita is from the northern central basin in southwestern Idaho. Welcome, Rita. Frank is here from New York, our moderator. Dagfinn is in Oslo, Norway, 2 a.m. -1°C, snowing. Sorry about that. Starting to warm up a little here. I mean, not warm, but I could wear a lighter coat. I don't have to wear a sweater anymore. But I do still wear a knit cap and gloves because I'm sensitive to the cold. Yes, Wayne is from Urbana, 17C. Hit the like button. You bet. No, I don't want to restart my computer. Do it later. Tom is in Western Oregon and notes 5 years of COVID. Yesterday, March 11, 5 years ago, in 2020, the WHO declared COVID a pandemic. And now it's over. And so that fulfills Amy's prophecy. It'll be over in 5 years, which she said sometime in 2020. So there you go. Thank you, Amy. Will is in Changsha, 16C, and pouring with rain. John is in Minneapolis. So Katie Kurik with Paul Offit. Yeah, Paul is all over. He's got to be all over and talk about measles, especially these days, but health topics in general, right? Chris wants to know, why is pulmonary syndrome so prevalent in the Four Corners? Well, actually, it's not. I will show you a map of incidence. That's to all do with the mouse reservoir. Okay, we'll get to it. And Chris and Lisa from Montreal, nice to see you here. -4C. Abdulaziz from KSA, 14 Celsius. Not that hot. Vista Tutti is from Sydney, where it's 26C and not raining. That is hot. Environmental is in Allegheny County, southern tier of Western New York, and had some surgery. Sorry about that, and hope you recover quickly. Yeah, Dixon tribute here on the Office Hours was recorded a few weeks ago. It's still there on YouTube. You could listen to it. This is another good question. The death of Gene Hackman's wife was identified as due to an infection from HPS, pulmonary syndrome virus. How long does Hantavirus remain identifiable? Well, they can do PCR on tissues, right? And, small pieces of RNA will still be around for at least a week, depending on the state. So I'm not surprised that they found it. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of virus in the respiratory tract, so you're going to get a signal. Also, they may have taken it. I bet they took environmental samples in the kitchen or whatever, and bathroom, and could find it there as well. Perhaps you'll give us a mini lecture on HPS. Yeah, it's coming. It's coming right up. Carol, our favorite nephrologist from Bakersfield, California. 19C, a mild climate, I would say, and expecting rain. Tona is, Rona. So, do you say Tona here because you don't want to say Rona Rook? You don't like that? Or Tona Rook is a little more easier to say? I don't know. Long Island, perfect weather. Patricia's in D.C. Brian is in Montreal, -3°C. So still cold up there in our tariffy neighbors. Sorry about that, Brian. You do know that most of us don't want these tariffs, and it's the stupidity of the administration that's making them happen. Childishness. There's zero reason for them. I'm sorry, but don't blame me because I did not put him in the White House. Any tips on how to keep a healthy gut microbiome? Well, you need to eat good foods, right? With a lot of plants in them too. But mostly stay away from antibiotics because that'll really skew your microbiome. Yeah. Patricia says, what do you think of the March 11th NPR piece on SARS-CoV-2 by Rob Stein? I didn't. Is it a written piece? I didn't read it. Or if it's an audio, I didn't hear it. If anyone has, let us know what it's about and what you think of it. Kang is in Chicago where it's 4C and clear. Last Friday, I was at the Stand Up for Science demonstration downtown and saw a sign appropriate to the measles outbreak. Vaccines cause adults. Yeah, that's a good one. I've certainly seen that one before. They do. Very sad situation when parents choose to listen to fraudsters instead of scientists. Hello, Steph from San Francisco, a moderator. Thank you for joining us. Angry Penguin is north of Toronto, -1C. A lot of northern neighbors here. Thank you very much. This is a friendly place. We're not going to put any tariffs on you. Canada sells a lot of electricity to the U.S. I always knew that. Not only do they send cold air to us, the Canadian Arctic wind, they send electricity. And so the thing is, they have threatened to shut it off, right? And I don't know, that it punishes people who are not in favor of these tariffs. And I'm not sure that their suffering makes any difference to the president whatsoever. Just my 2 cents. Helen, delightful 63 in Pittsburgh. Welcome. Is one flu shot for the season enough, or try 2 a year? So Daniel Griffin's recommendation is if you're 65 or over, you should get 2. But if you're under, you don't need to get 2. I'm playing with fire. I haven't gotten any this year because I don't know one. There's no reason. I have to do it. Even now in March, there's still opportunities for infection. I'm among a lot of people all the time, so I need to do that. I need to go to I could go to the Columbia. I don't think they probably don't have a kiosk anymore. They must all go to a drugstore. Margot is in Phoenix Metro 72F. Truman is from Fort Worth, Texas 684F. Jill is in Wilmington, Delaware 48F now, but it was almost 70 yesterday. Happy to have you. MN is outside DC where it's nice. Eliza is 0 in southern Ontario. Rach from the Isle of Man, your clocks have sprung forward, but ours haven't yet, so I'm still awake. Yeah, we have this clock springing forward, and they just did over the past weekend. So now it's darker in the morning at 6 a.m., but it's lighter at night. I don't care. I just want them the same all year round. I don't care if it's light or dark. Okay, Rach. Steph, raining like crazy here with high winds. That would be in San Francisco. Julie is in north central Pennsylvania where it's 48F. Carol was going to ask for a Hunter lecture. Thank you. Well, it's going to be, I would say, a micro lecture. It's not even a mini lecture, but we'll give you what you need to know, and you can ask questions, right? Betty is from Washington Heights. Welcome. And there's Kip, normally in San Francisco, but he's hanging out in New York City for a while. He stopped by the incubator briefly. Good to see you, Kip. You know, you can come to the incubator. It's not a big deal. You can stay for, well, it depends on my schedule, but, you know, I can give you a nice little tour in less than an hour. I tend to be chatty. Legotic is in Chicago, where it is a balmy 5C. And also probiotic pills for your microbiome. Yeah, that's another recommendation. Yep. Yes, Amy did say 5 years, you bet. Winter accessories like hat and gloves with regular clothes is very LA. Well, I still wear a coat. You know, it's a wool coat. I've been wearing up until now a very heavy, highly insulated zip-up jacket with a hood. Very heavy and very warm. I don't need that anymore. So I switched back to my coat, which is wool. It's got a nice quilted inside. But in the morning, it's nippy. So I put my little knit cap on and gloves. You know, the gloves I also put on so that I don't touch everything and contaminate myself. You know, the poles and the bars and seats and all that stuff, door handles. Because I don't put the gloves on my face. And then when I get home, I wash my hands. I'll wear the gloves as long as I can stand it, basically. But I also like the feel of gloves, right? It's kind of a cool, sinister feel. Especially tight-fitting gloves. Maureen is in Northeast Ohio, where the ice on Lake Erie has melted. Elizabeth is in West Virginia. A beautiful day, at least weather-wise. What happened to the legislature? Why is there such a long time between MMR vaccine doses on the schedule? That's a good question. I never thought about that. I could ask Daniel tomorrow, of course. It's not a booster, but it's designed to address the small percentage of individuals, 2 to 5%, who don't develop immunity after the first dose. And we did a paper on TWIV not too long ago where they looked at levels of antibodies in kids of different ages. So remember, the fetus, the baby, newborn, is going to get antibodies from the mother transplacentally. And since measles, mumps, rubella vaccine is infectious, those antibodies would interfere. So that's why you wait 4 to 5 months, right, for the first dose? No, 12 to 15 months. And that's because that's optimal for not having maternal antibodies interfere. And then the second one is 4 to 5 years later. Now, the trade-off doing it at 12 to 15 months, of course, is that in that time period, that first year, you can get infected. So, if they did it earlier, they would have less success because of maternal antibodies. And again, the second dose, which is, I agree, is long past, is to, because, the first dose, 5% of children do not respond to the vaccine. They don't make antibodies. So you come back, but that's a long time to wait. I agree. It seems to me that you could do it at 2 years of age, right? To make sure that those, you're not making an antibody response, so it's not an issue. I will have to ask Paul off at that. It's a good question. Cheryl is in Ontario, -1C. Elysian says RFK thinks it would be better if everyone gets measles. Right. He's an idiot to think that. At a fatality rate of 1 in 1,000? Really? I mean, what kind of crap is that? There's nothing wrong with the vaccine, RFK Jr. Nothing. Nothing has been proven to be wrong with the vaccine. It's all lies. Brian says smallpox got eradicated. Shingles has not. What properties give a vaccine a chance to stamp it out? Lifelong immunity or near lifelong immunity only reproduces in humans, and no inapparent infections. So that smallpox fits the bill for all of those. Shingles, the problem with shingles is that, you get infected at childhood. You get chickenpox first, varicella, and then it goes latent in you. Now, we have a chickenpox vaccine, but it also goes latent and can reactivate later, although at a lesser frequency, I think. So now shingles, now the herpes zoster DNA is in you, in your ganglia, and so you can't get rid of it. The best you could do is get a vaccine like Shingrix so that when you do get a reactivation, when you're 50 or whatever, it's milder as a consequence of the antibodies being produced. But, the fact that it's latent is really precluding eradication. So Tona says, Paul Offit was on Brian Lehrer this week with respect to autism debunking vaccine theory. Yeah. It's not even a theory. It's been proven many times that vaccines do not cause autism. And, the misinformers say it does, and they're lying. They're lying. Kip, thank you for your contribution to science communication. I'm on the Upper East Side. Let's hear the viral story. We will. We'll get to it. Dr. Offit deserves a huge raise and a nice vacation. Well, yeah, he's working hard to get the message out there. Frank says, how long do you think this measles outbreak will get? How big? Thousands of cases. Because whereas in the past, public health officials would go in and vaccinate people who are not vaccinated, that's not going to happen now. And so it's going to keep spreading. It's all over the place. I mean, the Texas outbreak is over 250 cases. It's ridiculous. It's a disaster. This shouldn't happen. We have great vaccines and great science to prevent this. Why do some people want to go back to the disease era? It really gets me. Makes no sense. You're not thinking critically. It's one thing if your religion tells you you can't be vaccinated, but actually, according to Paul Offit, there's no religion that has that in its codices, whatever it's written that what you do for that religion. He said there's only one small religion. All the others, it's not written. It's just made up. I know someone who said, my religion doesn't permit me to put things in my body. Okay. What about all that food and liquids that you're putting in your body? Does that count? Why not? Not thinking critically. Hey, Daniel in Brasilia, and welcome. Very nice to have you. Let's see. I guess it's winter down there, right? Rob is in Vancouver with fungus. Beautiful little mushroom you have there. Love it. Mark Martin, hello. Tacoma is rainy and cool. I lost a friend to Hantavirus many years ago. Yeah, it can be a very serious infection. Proceeds very rapidly. Lori is in Charlottesville, Virginia, 63F this evening. So I'm here in my basement. I'm really warm because, unfortunately, last night I recorded a short 5-year COVID video, which you may have seen on YouTube. When I came, I turned the space heater on, and I didn't turn it off. So it's been on for 24 hours, and it's really toasty in here, and I feel bad to have spent all that carbon unnecessarily. So I'm suffering by keeping my jacket on. There you go. Vista. RFK Jr. is making sure the only red coloring comes from measles. Yeah. Environmentalist said that was scary learning about Hantavirus because I've had mice. I just had them exterminated. I got all kinds of paranoid that maybe that was what was wrong with me. It's pretty rare, as you will see, but it pays to be careful, yeah. Laura is in Washington, Pennsylvania. Nice to have you. Cheryl is in Santa Rosa, California, rainy and 51. Okay, who's next? Angry. On a recent TWIV, you mentioned binding affinity to human ACE2. Right, that was the last TWIV where they measured binding affinity of this bat coronavirus to human ACE2, right? How is binding affinity measured, and why are the units expressed as molar? Well, the way they did it, which is very fancy, and you need special equipment, but it's really good, is what's called a Biacore unit. It's based on the principle that when you shine laser beam on a protein, when it binds its receptor or ligand, the light is going to reflect off at a different angle. So you can measure the changes in the angle of reflectance in terms of affinity of binding. Obviously, there are equations you use to do that. And so that's what they did. And you want to know why the units expressed as molar. Well, they're expressed as molar, and specifically the equilibrium dissociation constant, KD, right? Because that KD is the ligand concentration at which half of the binding sites are occupied, right? And so that reflects the strength of the interaction. So that's why you have it in molar, because the KD is a molar unit. That's the amount that would have you occupy 50% of the binding sites. Margot says it's supposed to dump rain in Phoenix tomorrow. I guess you need rain out there, right? Vanity's going to spoil the Hantavirus lecture. It was discovered in Death Canyon of Four Corners, Muerto Canyon, right? Several young people contracted severe pulmonary disease, which is highly unusual in young people. And it turned out that there were a lot of pinoli nuts that year. And as a consequence, the mouse population increased. That's all I'm going to say. Mike in Seattle 50F. Laura in Washington, PA 17C. Yeah. Does alcohol cause damage to the gut microbiome? Let's look it up. I don't know. Yeah, it can cause dysbiosis, right? Which is a change in the microbiome, and that can cause problems like inflammation. So it can kill off beneficial bacteria. So drink moderately, okay? Glyphosate has antibiotic properties. The herbicide, yeah. Leo is here. Made it. He's in the Mendocino Coast. 47F. Environmental Society. I fly Mexican and a Canadian flag right out front of my house in this very red area. Ha, my stupid ass neighbors. Oh dear. Wayne, tariff. You're going to tariff the Arctic wind. Yeah. Yeah. Yogurt has probiotics too, so you could make sure you get your yogurt. Steph attended Stand Up for Science Friday, 3/7 in San Francisco, well attended by scientists from UCSF, Berkeley, and Stanford. Great. Glad to hear that. They need to get out and make their faces known. They can't hide in their labs anymore. Shauna wants to know, do you know how the government taking away Columbia funding will affect you? Well, so there's a $400 million cut, right? And part of that is $250 million in research grants. So that's going to cut like 400 research grants in total, which is a lot, right? All of a sudden you don't have your grant. The 400 million is supposedly, because of anti-Semitism at the university, but I don't know what. I don't know what that other money, aside from the 250, does. Will it affect me? Well, I don't know, actually. It's a good question. I don't do research. I don't have federal grants. I'm a professor there, though. So I don't know if it's going to affect me in any way. Since I don't have research, it's not going to affect my research, right? But I don't know what else. I mean, I feel pain for my colleagues, right? This sucks. But I don't have research grants. Environmental wants to know if we will have a flu vaccine or COVID vaccine. I believe we will. I think that calm heads will prevail, and we will have the proper flu vaccine and a COVID vaccine. I don't know what they're going to do with the COVID vaccine, if they're going to match a variant or what. They barely did data for that in the past, and now I suspect they're going to do very little. But we'll see. But you'll have vaccines, yeah. You'll be able to get them. Makes Miniatures got the measles booster. It's just a measles vaccine. They don't call it a booster. It's to give people immunity who didn't respond to the first vaccine. So you need 2. Simon is in San Jose where it's raining. Vanity tried to set her clock 1 hour and 4 years ahead, but here we are. Gosh, if we could do that, right? Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be great? Marion is in Montreal where it's 26F. Welcome. Krishnan is in Malaysia. Good morning. Must be warm there. Unbaptized 2 writes, UK Murdoch paper, The Sun made a 45-minute doc on the lab leak nonsense. Please, can somebody make a documentary, I guess, a doco on why a lab leak is most unlikely that a child could understand. Well, we have made lots of programs on that. But maybe it warrants one just for that, yeah? I'll think about it. Does Medicare pay for a second flu shot over 65? That's a good question. I don't know. Yes, if your physician or healthcare provider says you need it, Medicare will pay for it. Will says China is pretty huge and has 1 time zone and no daylight saving. Yeah, I mean, this is all garbage in the U.S. I mean, okay, time zones are fine, but daylight savings is ridiculous. End of story. That's it. If I were president, my first executive order would be to get rid of daylight saving. Patricia's in Massachusetts. Welcome. Airy Ozone is in Asheville, 61F. Jefferson Space is in Miami. Marion, 26F in Montreal. What's happening in 4 years? New president. That's the incubator address. 352 7th Avenue, Suite 703, New York, 10001. In DC, Patricia says, we call that Metro Love. You got to wash it off your hands when you get into work. That's interesting. Oh, look, Mitzverdi has all these interesting, well, I see viruses. I don't know what the other one is. I can't see it. But it's cool. I like the virus, yeah. Wearing gloves protect your face, but then what about the pockets or surfaces the gloves touch? What do you mean? I don't. All I'm worried about is my face. I don't put my hands in my pockets with my gloves on. No. Ariel's on any update on the so-called mystery virus in Africa? You know, nothing. Crickets. Let's look it up. Or illness. No, still unknown. Seems to be a second outbreak in another village. Over 400 people. Lots of possibilities that are being explored. No information yet. Yeah. John says, is the timing of the second dose because of school attendance? Yeah, that very well may be. Yeah. Because they did say at the CDC site that it's to be prepared for school. So I bet that's it. Yeah. Hello, Marion, 26C in Montreal. Elizabeth says West Virginia is passing about every stupid MAGA dream law. They've passed out of the health subcommittee a law that says WHO can't make rules for West Virginia. They can't. And ivermectin will be over the counter. Yeah, it's great. People can poison themselves. Ivermectin in excess has neurological issues because it binds to receptors in the brain and spinal cord. So good luck with that, folks. Abdur Rahman from Brooklyn, welcome. It's good to see you again. He says, I got measles as 25 because I dodged the vaccine as a kid. Oh, we're glad you're okay. Matri wants to know, can you explain what the term independent means when we say there were 2 independent lineages found at the Wuhan market? Independent means they had 2 origins, 2 different animals. So if we say, let's say, a raccoon dog deposited 2 different raccoon dogs would be depositing each of those in a person at the market. And then maybe ancestral to the raccoon dog, maybe it came from 2 different bats. So, yeah, that's what independent means. And nothing wrong with MMR, and they're going to study it anyway. Yeah. It's just a waste of money. The study's going to be poorly done, yet RFK will claim that it proves that this is what he's been saying all in all. It's disgusting. Aditya's in India. Welcome. Rach. So Jeffrey Sachs talked to EU reps about Ukraine. He seemed okay, but I had issues with him. Looking him up, he believes COVID is a lab leak. Yeah, he does. He's from Colombia. You know him? So tell him. In fact, I don't know him. I never saw him. He's full of shit. Not a lab leak. Doesn't know what he's talking about. I don't know what to do with him. Marion, what African mystery virus are people talking about? So there's a new outbreak of, not a virus, a disease in Africa. An unidentified illness has caused more than 50 deaths in northwestern Congo, and now it's expanded to a second village. And so that's what we're talking about, trying to figure out what it is, but we still don't know what it is. Soul Symphony, please extend a piece of advice for struggling PhD students with focus less projects. Oh my gosh. Well, why is it focus less? Whose fault is that? Can you go to your advisor and talk with them and say, my project's not going anywhere. Can you help me? You have to figure out why it's focusless, right? And once I had a problem as a postdoc, and I went to a meeting for a week, and I came back supercharged because I heard all this good science, and it really made a difference for me. But I think you need to talk to your advisor and figure out why this is in that position, and don't let him blame you. Okay? There's a reason it's not focused, and you have to fix that. So maybe they can help you focus in on something that will make you feel productive, right? Because that's the first step, is to do experiments that work, and then you feel better about yourself. Trine wants to know if intradermal inoculation increases the immunogenicity of vaccination. Not universally. So, intradermal fractional dose IPV, an activated polio vaccine, has been tested. It doesn't really improve anything. So even though the skin is a very attractive place to put antigens, It doesn't work for everyone. Interesting. Nairenal MD. I would say as a physician, anti-vaccine bias went back all of the 25 plus years of practice, mostly in wealthy families. That's interesting. I wonder why. I don't know if you would say the Mennonite communities in Texas who are not vaccinating are wealthy necessarily. Cynthia is in Ventura County, California, where it's 57. Rain coming in. Landslides expected in burn areas. That sucks. Yeah. If I were a new mom now, Patricia says, if I had to choose one or two vaccines to get, for sure it would be MMR and polio. Yeah, I think that's a good choice. Yeah. Curious about Southern California and polio because of the poor wastewater plants in Mexico that drain into California. You're not going to get polio from wastewater. You're going to get it from people who fecally contaminate their hands, and they have a virus in their intestines, and they're going to pass it on to you. And the wastewater is just an indicator for the presence of virus in people's intestines, right? Because they go to the bathroom, and the feces goes into the wastewater, so then you can measure it. SRR, thank you for your contribution to science communication. We need it. We really need your help. These measles outbreak come from years of people not vaccinating. So essentially, measles was declared eliminated in the U.S. around 2000. And, in 1998, Wakefield published his lies implicating MMR vaccine in autism. And from that point on, people started to refuse getting it. And here in the U.S., and then it was imported into the U.S., and we started to have outbreaks. And that's where we are today. All because of Wakefield. And so, yeah, every year we have outbreaks, and now last year we had a lot. It gets worse because now prominent people are in charge who reemphasize the nonsense that there's a problem with the vaccine. So Daniel says in Brazil, it is 23C, extremely high UV radiation during the day. Oh, dear. It's summer. So that means mu means summer. He clarified that. Summer. Okay. Because we're just moving into summer here. Okay. So you must be moving into, so we're moving into spring. So you're moving into fall, I guess. Hello, Sabrina. Happy Wednesday, everyone. Thank you. SRRs in Paso Robles, California. Implosive alloy is in North Texas, 75S, and Implosive's 5 key is dying. Marion wants to know, is there any chance we might get a virus or virus family specific lectures? Yeah, we can do that. We've had a few, I believe. Let me look at the list. I have a list of mini lectures. Let's see. Office hours mini lectures. So we've had one on MERS coronavirus. We have had one on filoviruses. We've had one on RSV. But yeah, we could do more, sure. I mean, I like papillomas, HIV, etc. Yeah, we can do that. Sure, Marion. Absolutely. Abdur says, I was teaching a PEDS course, and I think we should focus on the rise of both autism and autoimmune disease. The increasing incidence of these diseases is what is really making the public alarmed. Yeah. Well, autism was discovered in the 30s when there were no measles vaccines. So it seems to me that that's one fact that you have to include in the equation. Listo says many top religious leaders encourage the followers to vaccinate, but not all. Religious exemption is just an excuse for anti-vaccine, but many people get medical exemptions, which is uncalled for, and the doctors should be called out for that. It's just inexcusable, right? Patricia, good evening. Patricia says the only time some people in government cough, cough, care about nutrition is when there is a disease outbreak of a vaccine preventable infectious disease. Yeah, you need good nutrition, right? Elizabeth says it was the public health experts talking to the tribal elders that helped them figure out the cause of the Hanta outbreak. Modern technical expertise is not the only important knowledge. That's for sure. Environmental wants to know, did they consider how many Jewish PI and students would lose their jobs taking away that grant money as opposed to the anti-Semitism? No, I don't think so. It's just a punishment, right? But yeah, so you're going to punish the wrong people. Jeff says, if one gets the flu vaccine today, would the immune system still recognize the same virus 10 years from now? All right, so if it's your first encounter with influenza, then yeah, you may have a memory recall in 10 years. So whatever vaccines or infections you get in the next 10 years, they would induce antibodies to this vaccine that we're talking about today. Excuse me. Oh. But if you're not, if you've had many encounters with influenza, then when you get this vaccine, it's just going to induce antibodies to your original strain, and it's not going to be around very long. Memory B cells, which produce antibodies to influenza, do not last very long. In general, mucosal infections do not produce enduring B cell responses. Nirenal MD. Oh, Nirenal. New York Renal MD. Another nephrologist. As a physician, I'm worried about loss of faith in science. Seeing both sides, we need to engage the public, not shame them. Yeah, I agree. We're already losing faith in science, but I'm reading the book by Adam Ratner, Boosters, and he says, he gets a child with measles, and the parents haven't vaccinated them. You can't shame them. He says it doesn't work. They get mad, and they will say, well, look, he or she is surviving, so it wasn't bad that I didn't vaccinate them. It's a very tricky situation. I don't know if any of you have read Booster, but Adam Ratner is a pediatrician here in New York, and he will be on TWIV Friday, so you can hear that on Sunday. The book is very good. Kang, I'm fascinated by the viral protein that induces diarrhea. Any viral proteins that cause coughing and sneezing, or are those mostly mediated by the immune system? Yeah, because coughing and sneezing, right, you would think would eliminate virus. So coughing and sneezing it can be a mix, right? The virus, it may irritate the air passages, but also the immune system, is doing the irritation as well by causing inflammation. And that's going to make you cough as well. It's hard to dissect the two apart, right? So with the rotavirus study, it was nice because they could make non-infectious virus, and if you gave it to mice, it made them have diarrhea. So immediately you can dissect the two, right? But you'd have to do the same with some respiratory virus and activate it and put it in the lungs of mice and see if they cough, right? That would be a cool experiment. Yeah. John writes, I doubt even tongue dragging would wake up the anti-science followers at this point. but he wanted to insert a twin reference. So the last episode, we talked about this behavior in mice called tongue dragging, where if you put an anesthetized mouse in a cage, and then you put another mouse, the other mouse will go up and sniff it and do a variety of things and eventually pull its tongue out. And that's called tongue dragging. So they would grab the tongue in their teeth and pull it out. And what the investigators did was to map the circuits, the brain circuits involved in that activity. And so in the rescue mouse, they mapped a circuit going from different places in the brain that said you have to go do this. And then in the rescuee mouse, they map a circuit from the tongue to a part of the brain that controls the legs. So basically the mouse bites the tongue, it sends a signal to this place, and that makes the mouse start moving its legs and wake up. It's just amazing. Tongue dragging. Thank you, John. Jeff, SARS-CoV-2 variants. I'm under the impression that the initial mRNA targeted a pretty conservative region. Actually, the mRNA vaccines were the whole spike encoded in the mRNA. Some people tried a small region, but it didn't work as well. So they used the whole spike protein. And but in fact, the antibody response is focused on just a few parts of the protein. Most of the antibodies are directed there, and those happen to be the ones that change in the variants. As I told my class today, it's not clear to me that we need variant-specific vaccines. No data have ever been produced that say a variant-specific vaccine is better at preventing disease than the old vaccine. It's never been proven. And as Paul Offit would say, I don't like giving vaccines to people without the data that they actually work. Do you hear that they are considering having NIH, prohibiting research at NIH on all mRNA vaccines because of this unproven idea that the mRNA integrates into your genome, which is so stupid, okay? Because you're full of mRNA. Of course it's going to integrate. Oh my God. It's really obnoxious. Tracy is in Chapel Hill. I missed you all last week. I really wanted to do it, but couldn't get on a train in time. Is it safe to swim in a pond where dead birds died from bird flu? I would say no. It's not chlorinated, and it may have virus. Who knows how long it's been there, but if it's relatively new, it could be infectious. I would not take the chance. And New York Renal MD says, worry about the brain amoeba instead. But I do think if you have a lot of birds in the lake, you better be careful. Sharon is in Tasmania, where we have big cyclones in the northern tropics. All I can say is it's daytime. Well, thanks for coming. Jeff says, why wait for 4 years for a new president when we could overturn Congress in 2? We need progressive Democrats willing to fight to replace the Clinton Dems who go along with the GOP. Well, Jeff, don't you think the House could be flipped in these special elections? I mean, I don't know, but maybe it's possible. Silvio Pita, hello again. Thank you for your support of science communication. You're still in Burbank. Long live science. What is the accuracy of a titers test for measles in my early 60s? Almost sure I caught it as a kid, but just to be safe. Well, they can do antibody titers on you, and they can tell you if you have titers or if you should get a booster. If you only got one, you should get a second. That's what Daniel is saying. John says, I know some people who got ivermectin horse paste and ate it for COVID. Yeah, this is just the fact is, folks, ivermectin doesn't do anything for COVID. But you'll have people say, oh, I got COVID and I took ivermectin and I got better. Well, my friend, you are lacking in critical thinking. It doesn't prove anything. And clinical trials have been done, properly designed. Clinical trials have been done and show no effect of ivermectin on progression to illness or hospitalization. No effect whatsoever. Anyone else gets squeamish at the sound of raccoon dog? They're actually very cute, and I feel bad that they're in a cage and going to be eaten by someone. You see the pictures of them, they're very sad looking. A judge tried to order you to give ivermectin, and oh my gosh, this judge should not be getting involved because they don't know. I guess you didn't do it. David is in Dayton, Ohio. Jeff says Republican voters are their own worst enemy and may learn a lesson this time because the GOP is governing as badly as they falsely claimed government is. Patricia, Professor, regardless of how many times people try to flip-flop with daylight savings, such as executive orders, the fact is we still have 24 hours in a day and 7 days a week. Yeah, I agree. And why not leave the clock alone? Okay, why do we have to play with it? Yeah, I could. Frank says I could see the MMR study comes out, and then they want to ban the vaccine. Yeah, and the study is crap, and then they may succeed in banning the vaccine. And then we have hundreds of thousands of cases of measles again, just like the 60s. Hello, Marco. 135,000 subscribers. Yes, on YouTube, we're about to hit 136. Onwards, folks. Dorothy says, I'm alive because of science. I was part of the first 1948 study to attempt to cure TB in infants who were not expected to live. It worked. Love science and scientists. Oh, Dorothy, if only more people felt that way. What a better place this would be for all of us. Well, Elizabeth thinks the MMR study is a delay tactic. RFK Jr. is trying to look like he's doing something for the anti-vaxxers while avoiding the major S show he'll get if he actually banned the vax. It's true. Thank you for your support of science education, John. I learned from this channel that Sting is the police of the cytoplasm, not the nucleus. Oh, you listen, John. That's very cool. That was in Monday's lecture on intrinsic and innate immunity. Sting is the name of the DNA sensor in the cytoplasm. And I said the name of this molecule that detects DNA indirectly is Sting. It is the police of the cytoplasm. And I got a few titters from the students. They're very tough to make laugh, I must say. But I guess I like old dad jokes or something. I don't know. Good job, John. You listen. I love it. Vanity says RFK Jr. made what amounted to be a Shake Shack commercial while eating there the other day. Second time we've seen him eating fast food. Unbelievable that anyone still thinks he's a good guy. Oh, my God. A guy who stands up and says, this outbreak in Texas is no big deal. Let's move on. He's not a good guy. He's nasty and hurtful. Angry Penguin just donated. Thank you so much. My niece phoned me today and was asking about HPV vaccine. Thanks to you, Vincent, I was able to explain to her the mechanism of how it causes cancer. I'm glad to hear that, Angry. Good for you. I'm glad you learned. Good. What's the like situation? We got 200 people here, 130 likes. Hit the like button, folks, if only to attract more people to our science, right? Happy Thursday from Sharon in Tasmania. Yeah, it is Thursday there. It is Thursday. Tashiana, Beast Mode in Birmingham, 70F. Retroviruses. Vista wants to know, how do they guide where in the host genome they integrate? It's pretty much random, but there are some preferred integration sites. But so the integration complex, right, which consists of the viral DNA plus the integrase, the enzyme that's going to integrate it into the host DNA, they bind a host protein that's attached to the host DNA in the form of chromatin. Chromatin is what we call host DNA wrapped around protein. And there are a bunch of proteins in there, and one of them binds the pre-integration complex, and that's how they target it to the DNA. So it's not, I'm sorry, did I say it was random? It's not random. There are some preferences, right? But it integrates everywhere pretty much. Valley fever. It's a fungus called by coccidiomycosis. It's a fungus, Coccidioides immitis, and these spores are common in the soil of southwestern U.S., Central and South America, and you inhale the spores, and most people, they're okay, but other people, maybe immunocompromised people, the spores germinate, and you get severe respiratory symptoms. Okay. Yeah, it can be carried in the wind. Spores are very light. Frank wants me to explain fifth disease. Fifth disease is a rash disease of childhood caused by parvovirus B19. It's a totally different virus from measles virus. A parvovirus is a DNA virus, and it's related to parvoviruses that can infect dogs and cats, and for which you have to vaccinate them, right? But in children, it's a human virus, parvovirus B19, and you get a bright red rash on the cheek, and it spreads to the arms and the legs and the trunk, and most kids are okay. They survive. Patricia, you like the time changes? I don't. You get used to one, then you have to flip. I wonder why. Why do you like the time changes? Crazy lit asin. The CDC website says measles is an RNA virus that infects dendritic cells and macrophages and lymphocytes in general, which would include B and T cells. It eventually spreads to epithelial cells. How does this compare to SARS-CoV-2 and epithelial cells? So you inhale the measles virus. It goes into your respiratory mucosa and crosses it. It's actually taken in by immune cells. Sets up replication in lymphoid cells, leukocytes, spreads to the skin, so you get the rash. Then the virus in the blood goes back to the respiratory tract, and in the lung, it goes underneath the respiratory epithelial layer, and the virus binds to a receptor on the bottom of the epithelial cells, gets into those cells, reproduces, and then gets out the top. And that's how you spread it to others, by coughing it out. It's totally different from SARS-CoV-2. SARS-CoV-2 comes in the top and goes out the top. It doesn't really go underneath At least it's not part of the pathogenesis. Some people will tell you it does, but I don't believe it. Show me the data. Vincent, are you saying that medically scripted ivermectin is the protein warning or the equestrian? So the equestrian form is a higher dosage for big animals, right? It is given to humans at lower doses to control parasite infections like river blindness. And it is given at doses that are too low to have any effect on SARS-CoV-2 reproduction. So, and clinical trials have been done in which people have been given ivermectin in a control situation where some people get none, some people get ivermectin, and you look at COVID, and there's no difference. Interesting. Will says in Texas, 14% of the old order Mennonites are classified as having medical exemptions. They should be struck off. 14% is way too high. A physician told me once medical exemptions should be about 1% maximum of the U.S. population. So here they're just using it as an excuse. But the doctors should be held to the fire because they shouldn't be doing that. They should know better. Craig says autism and spectrum occurrence may not be changing as much as recognizing it is increasing. In retrospect, I can think of people who qualified strongly on the spectrum. I think that's a very big part of it, right? Mm-hmm. But really, many studies have been done, over a dozen, looking for a connection between MMR vaccine and autism, and there is none. If it were there, they would find it. People don't know, according to Implosive Alloy, the history of our understanding of autism, so they don't know how diagnosis has changed over time. Yes, I agree that people who say, oh yeah, Wakefield is right, they have no idea about autism for the most part. Sorry. I'm sorry I yawned. It's been a long day. Brain retardant asks, in your opinion, does SV40 from polio vaccine cause any soft tissue cancers? I've looked at the data, and a lot of studies have been done to look at this, and there's no, in my opinion, there's no association. Sabrina, no one in their right mind messes with the health and wellness of its people, takes away healthcare, vaccinations, limits access to care, treatment, prevention, etc. It's irresponsible at the least. I don't understand. Yes, you're totally right. Same thing goes for the education department, by the way, and other things, but we won't talk about that. Congress is just sitting there doing nothing. And all these Republicans who control it, you should ask them this. Why are you messing with healthcare? If you want to change it, that's fine. But you don't shut it off first and let many people get sick and then try and fix it. That's about as dumb an approach to it as there is. When not reading science, what do I like to read? I try to read. I read every day Helen Cox Richardson's column, unfortunately. I like to read The New Yorker. I actually subscribe to it. It comes to the incubator. And occasionally Atlantic magazine, too. Rach says, I feel sorry for Americans. RFK Jr. is bonkers, and so many people believe his nonsense. The spread of lies seems unstoppable. I try to correct folks online, but they just laugh as they're brainwashed. Yeah, Rach, who's from the Isle of Man, right? That island between England and what? Ireland, Scotland? No, Ireland. Scotland's on the top of England. Anyway, Isle of Man is in the water. I'm glad that people overseas recognize this. This is screwed up totally. When am I going to wake up and it's going to be fixed? Yeah, no evidence for SV40 in any cancers. That's right. Soul Symphony thanks me for the answering. I feel a great deal of benefits in the broadcast, the office hours, virology lectures. Just listening into my headphones as I work every day. I'm glad. Good for you. Good for you. Ariozone. The current administration just confused transgenic mice with transgender. Pure idiocy. Because they don't do their work. They don't study. They don't read. They don't try and use what is the logic in any way. Critical thinking. You know, you see a word, you better know what it means. And you spew it out and take all these grants out. What a bunch of bozos. Bozos. Yes, Vivian was great to have back to twins. She had another kid, and I'm really glad she comes back because it's a lot of work to do that. Yeah. Jill says, so tongue dragging in mice is kind of like a sternum rub for people. I don't know. I don't know what sternum rubs do, but I'll take your word for it. Vanity says, it is possible to flip the Senate with the special election. Current admin is certainly doing everything they can to make it happen. Yeah. Will, from the perspective of China, says, I doubt Republican voters will learn that data are clear. COVID fatalities are higher in red states because of anti-vax sentiments. Jeff writes, Ivermectin works well on my hairless squirrels. One dose is generally enough to cure their mange or whatever it is, and they grow their hair back. Helped a few this winter. This is very interesting. I do the same thing. So we have foxes in the area they look very mangy, right? The tails are very thin. So we put out, we buy these turkey meatballs and stuff ivermectin. We even figured out the dose that they would need. JT, I heard CDC is now trying to prove MMR vax is bad. Well, that's not how science works. You don't go out to prove something is bad. You have to have an hypothesis. And okay, so your hypothesis could be MMR causes autism. Well, we've done 12 friggin' studies to address that. You're going to do number 13? It doesn't make any sense. It's a waste of money. What's the problem with the current studies? There are no problems. But they want to just game the system to say there is a problem. Yeah, ivermectin, besides strongyloidiasis, is also for onchocerciasis, river blindness. Yep. John says, it's apparent to me that RFK is suffering from PTSD, and yet nobody is mentioning it. Now, is it true that Elon Musk is a ketamine addict? I didn't know that until recently. Well, that's a problem. I don't know if it's true. Does anyone know? Thoughts on the $250 million NIH funding cut? Yeah, we talked about this just a bit. I mean, this is like 400 research grants. That's a lot. That's going to make a big difference. People are going to be hurting. Did Vincent talk about Gene Hackman? I'm going to do that shortly. I'm going to do a little mini lecture before we finish. Oh, hey, Vincent, this is your cousin Joe Gasparini from Stamford. Wow, good to see you. I'm getting to be a fan of TWIV. That's great. I have questions about whether antiviral meds like valcyclovir will reduce the risk of neurodegenerative diseases. I think you're going to ask, like Alzheimer's. Well, there's studies ongoing right now to see if these anti-herpes drugs will reduce the risk, and it's going to take a while, obviously, because it takes time to progress to advanced stages. So we'll see, but that's a hypothesis. Yeah, good to hear from you. Wow, your dad was Joe, also, right? Who was my contemporary. Wow. Visto is measles rash producing infectious virions. Yes. Yeah, the rash is infectious. Yep. Patricia says the New York Daily Today on New York Times says there is no tenet in Mennonite faith against vaccines. Yeah, that's what Paul Offit says. There is none in all but one. It's just a lie. It's an excuse. Am I familiar with methylene blue? I I don't know its use of an antiviral. It could be, but I know it can be used for like thrush, oral candida in babies. Visto, with my TB vaccine from 40 years ago, be protective. Let's look it up. It depends on the study, anywhere from 10 to 20 years, but not 40 years. Is debunking a anti-vaxxers counterproductive as they seem to get just more entrenched? I don't know what is productive, but now the NIH has canceled all grants where they were studying what makes people anti-vax. They just canceled the grants, which are probably useful, you would think. But now because NIH and HHS is run by anti-vaxxers, we're not going to look into that anymore. In the old days, the NIH would fund science, even science it didn't particularly like. But the idea about science is you look at everything. You give everybody a shot. This admin wants to have it their way only. That sucks. Gregory says, which time would be permanent? Daylight savings are standard. My Finnish friend who lives above the Arctic Circle plays havoc raising children. Her 4-year-old daughter once woke and went outside to play at 3 a.m. I don't care. Just pick one and stick with it. I would say standard and stick with it, right? Eric. wait. JT, I need an isolated island for the next 4 years. You can't go away. You have to join with us and fight this. Eric, our SARS-CoV-2 transmission by birds. Beta coronaviruses don't infect birds. Russia said COVID from Ukrainian CIA lab taken to Russian by BS. BS. No, they don't. It's the gamma coronas that primarily infect birds. Sternum rub, Tom says, in emergency medicine, it's first aid to determine the level of consciousness. Okay, didn't know that. New York Renal MD says, my hypothesis with ivermectin, the few studies that showed any benefit or in countries that had endemic parasites. When you give corticosteroids for COVID-19, it makes the parasite worse. Okay. Mike was in Panama City, Panama, temperature 97. That's where Daniel is heading next week. Oh, okay. Dan says Elon takes ketamine for depression. Okay. Jill says debunking anti-vaxxers is waste your time. There's a chance you're not even arguing with a person. Joseph said, I am your contemporary. My mom was your dad's cousin. All right. We'll have to connect and compare histories. All right. Tom says, I'm not a fan of Elon Musk, but nothing to be gained by speculating on alleged drug use. You're right, Tom. I won't do it anymore. Rita says, I was amazed that wild animals don't carry the parasite load that domestic animals do. You know, Dixon always used to say that parasites keep wild animal populations in check. Kind of knew what he was talking about, right? Artemis, should all adults get a booster for most of the vaccines they got as a child? No, I don't think that's necessary. I certainly won't do that. Yeah, Will has got a good point. Debunking anti-science, Dr. Stephen Hassan recommends gentle, sympathetic discussion. Yeah, that's what Adam Ratner, the author of Boosters, says. You have to have a calm discussion to find out why they're anti-vax. Let's find out why you're anti-vax. Aerozone. Yeah, the man from Uncle. That's right, Thrush. And what's the guy who was subsequently in NCIS? Ducky. What was his name? I have an album of Man from Uncle, original TV series. He's so young on that album. It's amazing. Okay, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to mark this question, and we'll do a short mini lecture. We'll call it a micro lecture on Hantavirus and Gene Hackman. I titled it. I should have put his wife in there too, because she's part of the story. Okay, so what's going on here? So, a while ago, Gene Hackman was living in Santa Fe with his wife. He was 95 and suffering from advanced Alzheimer's, and he was married to Betsy Arakawa. She was 65. They'd been married for 30 years. And what apparently happened was that she died of a hantavirus infection 7 days before Hackman died on the 18th of February. So Hackman was totally dependent on her care. He couldn't take care of himself. So he probably was confused and wandering around and not eating and not drinking and got dehydrated. And they say on his death certificate, it said heart attack, myocardial infarction. But, it's all because he couldn't take care of himself because she was dead. The two of them, she died first and then he dies, and they're both sitting in the house. And the pair, and one of the dog was in a crate, so he couldn't even get out to eat. What a terrible story. Found dead in the home after neighborhood security conducted a welfare check and saw their bodies on the ground through a window. It's too bad. I liked Gene Hackman as an actor. I didn't see many of his movies, but I remember ages ago I saw The French Connection, and I thought it was great. He was really good in that. Okay, what is a hantavirus? Actually, what she had was Hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, HPS. And this is a disease first noted in the Four Corners area of New Mexico in 1993, right? So that's the Four Corners area where the 4 states come together. And you can go visit, and there's a plaque on the ground. It says this is where the 4 states come together. But very young people were dying of severe respiratory infections. And that's not normal, right? Young people should not die. So this got the attention of public health officials. The CDC came in, and turned out that these people were dying of sin nombre virus, which is what it's called now, which they acquired from the deer mouse. So this virus is endemic in the deer mouse. About 30% of these mice, Paramiscus maniculatus, are virus positive. So you need to be careful with mice. We have these mice in the Northeast here. Interesting side, the first cases were in Muerto Canyon, as Vanity pointed out. So the CDC called it Muerto Canyon virus. And the residents said, no, you can't name a virus after our lovely locale. So they tried another name, which they didn't like. And so then the CDC, in a rare show of humor, called it sin nombre. No name. I think that was brilliant. So what is it? It is a member of the Hantaviridae, the hantavirus family. It is an enveloped virus with spikes in the envelope, and it has a negative strand RNA genome in 3 segments, a small, a medium, and a large segment. And because the genome is negative stranded, it comes in with an RNA polymerase, and the genome is coated with protein. These viruses are not new, but we've known them before 1993. What was new was the association of this particular virus with Hantavirus pulmonary syndrome. So what happened? Why all of a sudden in 1993 do we have HPS? Well, as Vanity pointed out, in 1992-93, maybe she learned this in my virology course, I don't know. Abundant rainfall produced a large crop of pinon nuts, which humans like. I like pinon nuts very much, especially on those cookies, those little cookies studded with pinon. Oh my. Americans call them pine nuts, but we Italians and Hispanics call them pinons. And the mice also like pinon nuts. So a lot of rain, a lot of pinon nuts. Mouse population increases. That's the ecology, the basic ecology of nature. You have more food, you get more of what is eating that food. And so the mouse population goes up in those years, and the mouse population rises, and their contact with humans increases. And what that means is they go into people's houses, and they go in and they excrete. They excrete feces and urine, and the virus is in that. And so contaminated blankets or dust from floors provided the opportunities for human infection. So, it's typical. If you see some mouse pellets on the ground, right? They come out pretty dry, and then they dry out quickly. You have this urge to sweep them up with a pan and brush, right? But that aerosolizes the virus, and you're going to inhale it because you're squatting down there, right? So you shouldn't do that. You should instead spritz it with bleach and let it sit for a bit to inactivate the virus, and then you could scoop it up and put it in a bag and throw it out. But, wherever there are mice, they're going to come and poop in your domicile. That's what they do. So here it is, the poop virus, and you inhale it, and you get Hantavirus pulmonary syndrome. And that's why was first noted in 1992 because of the increase in the mouse population, but it's not new. Going back and looking at medical records, we realized that we could see cases as far back as 1959. So typical. It's been around. So this would be a zoonotic infection. It does not transmit from humans to humans. Every human case is a new spillover from mice. And this can cause serious lung problems. And that's why Betsy Arakawa presumably died. So Santa Fe, lots of mice, and they go in their house, they poop or pee, and she tries to clean it up and gets an infection. And by the way, she doesn't seek medical care. So this is probably a big problem, that she could have gone to a clinic, but maybe she was concerned about her husband and didn't want to leave him. She should have gotten medical care. Well, then she would have been hospitalized and intubated and so forth. And someone would have had to take care of Mr. Hackman in the meantime. So what about these mice? Where are they? First of all, on the left is a map of the U.S. with cases through 2022. So we started looking for them, basically around the early 90s. And there have been 831. And you can see some states don't have any. Some states have 1 to 15, 16 to 50, or over 50. Over 50, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, California, and Washington. And here in the Northeast, it's pretty rare, 1 to 50. New York has had 6. And New Jersey, none. How about that? Now, the deer mouse, Paramyscus maniculatus, is called the deer mouse. Its range is a good part of the U.S. and Canada, as you can see here, the green shading. So we have these mice around us, and they are a risk factor. There are also other mice that carry the virus, the white-footed mouse, the rice rat, and the cotton rat. I once went to Vermont and talked with a Hantavirus person, and he said, if you trap mice, it's a risk because 30% of them can have Hantaviruses. They can infect you, and you can get very sick. So you have to treat them with great containment. Should be treated under BSL-3 containment. It's actually an old TWIV. Viruses in Vermont, I think, was the name of it. I found this interesting study where they looked in the serum of mice for antibodies to these viruses. So this is New York State on the left, all the different counties. And this is looking for sin nombre virus on the left and Sol virus, which is a related virus. It's a different mouse strain, Paramyscus leucopus, but like Paramyscus maniculatus, carry hantaviruses. And you can see the numbers here. These are the positives are just the shaded ones. You can see upstate, very rare. 1 out of 40, 1 out of 20, 1 out of 8 mice were positive for antibodies to the virus. And interesting, Long Island has quite a bit. Look at 91 out of 400 specimens positive on Long Island. Same for Sol virus is a little more widespread. And then we have mice tested for sin nombre in Paramyscus leucopus mice in a specific place, a state park in Suffolk County, somewhere on Long Island, right? And these are over the years, 86, 87, 88, 9, 90, 91, 92, and 93. And, in some years they look at a lot of specimens, and the black ones are sin nombre positive. So, it's pretty low, but not zero. So that's why it's so rare, because your incidence in the mouse population is pretty low. Okay, so to summarize, hantaviruses are found in the Western Hemisphere, including in the U.S., and they can cause hantavirus pulmonary syndrome. And the most common hantavirus that causes HPS, sin nombre virus, is spread by the deer mouse. But other hantaviruses can cause it as well. Another disease called hemorrhagic fever with renal syndrome, HFRS, these are clinically similar illnesses caused by hantaviruses found mostly in Europe and Asia. First discovered in Korea, I believe. Hantavirus. And finally, Sol virus is a type of hantavirus that causes HFRS, and that's found worldwide, including in the U.S., and that's why they're looking for Sol virus here in mice in the U.S. So this is going to be a serious disease. It's a kidney problem that can get you in big trouble. So that's hantaviruses, and I bet you didn't know a lot of that stuff, right? Let's go to the videotape. Okay. We're talking about, Dave says in 2023, an H5 outbreak killed an estimated 20,000 sea lions. Of course, these are mammals. Why didn't we hear more about it? It was on TWIV, Dave. Special TWIV from Baltimore, which I did in maybe 2023. And I had the fellow from Chile who studied this outbreak. You know, why didn't we hear about it? It was published in a journal. It was on TWIV. Got a lot of publicity, in my opinion. But that was the first example of mass killing of mammals by this virus. And it was concerned. I asked the panel, are you concerned? They said, I'm not concerned about people. I'm concerned about the wildlife. It's going to wipe them out. There you go. David McCallum. There you go. The man from Uncle. She had Hantavirus, not Hackman. That's funny. Bias 2 says, careful with Dr. Hassan. His bite model for identifying cults is popular outside of academia, but is considered fringe. Okay. Patricia says, maybe the doctors at the Texas hospital should publicly explain on TV what the patients are going through. So apparently there was an article in Atlantic where they spoke with the family of the child who died. I didn't get to see it, but I'd be interested if anyone has read that. David McCallum, who died, I think it was 2023, portrayed Ilya Kuryakin in The Man from U.N.C.L.E., and then he played Ducky in NCIS. Visto, the virus that dare not speak its name. Yeah, Wayne's correcting it to 23. Yeah. Yeah, they'd call it fake news. RFK Jr. say measles is no big deal. It's just a rash. Hit the wrong nut. I thought you said pinon nut. Okay, it's fine. Kinesin. Very good. Kinesin motors carrying cargo on microtubules. Are these actually office hours for a class? I just got recommended this. No, I have a class and I do office hours with the students. And I thought a number of years ago to do this and make an office hours for everyone where basically everyone can come and talk about viruses. I can answer their questions. I can give them mini lectures and so forth. So there you go. It's for the public, which Vanity just explained. I should have looked ahead. Yep. Margot said we had 7 pinon nut trees in our yard in Los Alamos growing up. At least 3 produced well. Kids used to pick them and roast them. They're very expensive when you buy a jar of them in the store, right? A lot. Yep. In Northern Europe, are there dangerous viruses from mouse droppings? Well, yeah, one of these hantaviruses is in mice, but there are also squirrel viruses in Europe. Let's look it up. Yeah, so here, the Pumala hantavirus, Puumala, which I believe is a Finnish word with the two U's, right? It's carried by bank voles. Bank voles are these animals. They control all the money. The bank voles. They carry this virus, and people can get it, and it can cause a disease called nephropathia epidemica. So it's a form of HFRS. The kidney is the problem. Is the target there? Yeah. Would spritzing mouse feces with alcohol work rather than bleach? I could see where you might want to put bleach on your oak floors, right? Should be okay. 70% should be good. Margot says there are lots of pinon trees in the Santa Fe area. Good point. Los Alamos is just northwest up the hill, hence the hill. That's a good point. Does this affect rats? Not that I know of. Only the rice rat. If you know what a rice rat is. Let's look it up. That was on my slide. Semi-aquatic North American rodent. I don't even know if it's in your area. No, it's not in your area at all. It's in the mostly in the southeastern U.S. So I don't think you have any rats carrying Hantas out there. It gangs, right. Is there an irony for the residents of Muerto Canyon not wanting to have the virus named after their area? Well, I don't know what you mean exactly, but pre-90s, really, people didn't care about having viruses named after their locales. That's why lots of viruses have location names associated with them. But suddenly with this one, people said no. And ever since, people said no more. Hello, Jason from France. Nice to have you here. Dave, look this up. Studies have shown that Hantavirus can remain infectious in droppings for up to 3 weeks at room temperature, 6 weeks at 4 degrees, 8 months at minus 20. Not super long, but long enough, right? And so maybe in sampling, the Hackman house, they found some mouse droppings and they turned out to be positive. But I just don't know. Are there any papers on human transmission of Hanta? No, it does not transmit among humans. It transmits from mouse feces to humans. It's a zoonosis. Okay. Are deer mice a factor in Lyme disease? No, it's a deer tick. Right. That's the factor. What medicine would one take? There's no medicine. Go to a hospital, you get supportive therapy, right? If you need oxygen, that's what they give you, and make sure you stay hydrated and so forth. But there's no therapy. Pumala is the town where they discovered the virus. I love that name. It just got a lovely ring with the 2 U's. Thank you, John, who seems to be from Finland also, with 2 A's in the last name. There's another virus that used to be studied a lot from Finland, Uukunimi virus. It's very cool. Look it up. Do anti-inflammatory drugs increase the risk of infection? Depends when they're given. If they're given early, yeah. Well, I'm assuming you mean you're already infected. Maybe I'm wrong. If you give them early, of course, it will make the infection worse. But if you give them later where there's an inflammatory phase and not much virus, then they can help you. Do they increase risk? Yeah. Of course. Steroids, immunosuppressive drugs increase risk. You have to be careful with them. So someone says we need some challenge. You can challenge me as much as you want. Just ask the right questions. You're not going to find many people that have been studying viruses for 45 years. Kang, does Hanta kill the deer mice? No, they don't. This is one of these examples of a well-adapted virus to its host, like many bats that are not killed by their viruses. Yeah. GR, my virology exam went great thanks to you. I'm glad you were able to do well. It's not just me, it's the whole world teaching you. Can handling banknotes. No, bank voles can lead to poliovirus infection for sure. But I don't believe banknotes will transmit rhinoviruses. They've done that experiment many years ago. They put rhinovirus on Swiss banknotes. What better place to put it? And the virus lasted a long time on the surface. And if you mixed it with mucus, it lasted even longer. I don't remember the times, but the point being, you could put virus on a banknote, but you touch your nose, you touch your banknote, you give it to someone else, you give them a virus. Yeah. Oh, I get it. Muerto Canyon means dead canyon. Did they notice the irony? Yes, that was. Sorry, the comment from Kim Kang. Did they notice the irony? I guess not. But the CDC gave in, right? But does it only transmit in feces? Pee and poop. That's where it transmits, as Les points out here. Well, one of our participants said he will be back with more tough questions. I didn't see any tough ones. I just saw nonsense that ignores everything that's been done. Margot, she probably thought she had the flu and would be okay. All my years in Los Alamos, Santa Fe, I never knew a soul who got Hanta. The whole situation is so sad. Yeah, you're probably right. She probably thought she had the flu and could handle it. It's very sad, right? They could both still be alive, and the dog. Yeah. Pesto has basil and pine nuts ground up. Oh my God, it's so delicious. Yes, Les, thank you very much. Eric says poliovirus would be called Pixamaki virus, but Anglophones wouldn't be able to pronounce it. Pixamaki. I can pronounce it. And you know what? I can ask someone how to pronounce it, and they could help me. Like when I was in Finland last summer and asked people how to pronounce things, because the words there are so amazing, right? Like this one, Pixamaki, with two A's with double dots over them. And there are all kinds of others that are very cool. Very long words. I love it. I think it's very cool. Pumala. So that's the name of the town. Okay. Very good. So to clarify, ticks are the vector, but some are carried by deer. Though I do not personally worry much, do watch for ticks. You should be careful. You don't want to get Lyme. It's a real bad thing to get. Really bad thing to get. It's interesting that people come here and they have these questions that they believe will challenge everything I'm saying, but they provide no references for any of it. Yes, people stuff steel wool to block. So mice do not like to go through steel wool. So if you have various cracks in your house foundation, for example, you could stuff steel wool in it, and that will impair them. And I guess you could do that in the car too. New York Renal MD, thank you for your support of science communication. So the drug Probenecid shows antiviral properties against influenza and COVID-19, exploiting OAT3 gene. Have you heard of this? It's a drug nephrologists use sometime. Probenecid. So it's used for treating gout. And it was found to have broad-spectrum antiviral activity against several respiratory viruses, including SARS-CoV-2. And someone I know, Ralph Tripp, published a paper in Viruses. He did a phase 2 randomized placebo-controlled single-blind dose range finding in non-hospitalized patients with symptomatic mild to moderate COVID. Some were treated, some were not. He says you get a significant dose-dependent decrease in time to viral clearance and a higher proportion of patients reporting symptom resolution by day 10. So this trial was conducted in India, and it was published in 2023. So the question is, why doesn't this go further? It has to be trialed in the U.S., and that's very expensive, and there's not a lot of COVID, probably not enough to do a clinical trial anymore. Sabrina says, tripesto elatrapanase. Western Sicilia pesto. Trapani, which is this city, town that you're talking about, there's a virus named after it, Trapani virus. It's a virus of archaea that live in hot springs. Very cool. Maybe the steel wool zapped the little mouse. I don't think so. I think they just don't like to go through. But let's find out. Do mice hate steel wool? They don't inherently hate it. They find it difficult to chew through. So it's difficult to chew through, so they give up. It's very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, so just be careful of ticks because they can have Lyme, the Lyme spirochete, but they can also have Babesia. It's very common in New York State, but also others. And of course, all the grant money is cut, so we can't even study this anymore. Trapani has a huge area of salt pans, yes, and the archaea are probably living there, and that's where this virus was isolated from. See if I can find it. It's actually a archaea virus. Yeah. We'll have to look it up. It's very cool. So Tom says, there are references. You can now find credentialed independent thinkers to say write anything. Peter Duesberg. Yes, but nobody believes them. No scientist believes them. The lab leakers, Peter Duesberg, etc. So this guy who was here before says it's never been proven that viruses are transmitted among humans. Well, actually, it has been. Some challenge studies have been done with specific viruses that are not pathogenic. But all you have to do is study the early epidemiology of COVID, and you can see person-to-person spread. They did spread within homes, for example, very carefully studied, where you can tell who comes in infected and who gets it. I mean, it's not even worth talking about. It's a fundamental tenet of virology that viruses are spread from organism to organism. If they weren't, they wouldn't exist, right? Without a host, we have no viruses. Without transmission to a new host, there's no viruses. So it makes zero sense. It shows a lack of critical thinking to say there's no proof that viruses transmit. Oh my gosh. I mean, I just teach this as a fundamental principle of virology. And when someone comes along and says that's not true, it really bothers me. Oh my gosh. Trapani. Privet Veronika. Dobroj noci. Good night from Moscow. Good night. See you next time. See you next time. Thanks for coming. Let's see. What else did I want to? Oh, yeah. Dave says, if you really want to be scared of ticks, go read up on powassan. 100 times more terrifying than the bacteria they carry. This is coming from a previous slime. Yeah, powassan virus is spread by ticks. And it's found in North America and the Russian Far East, named after Powassan, Ontario. You see, back then, and a boy died of it, back then the town didn't mind having the virus named after it. Good for you, Powassan. New York Renal. MD, thank you for your support of science communication. How they figured it out, Probenecid also boosts Tamiflu levels and was investigated to help drug supply. It was used to extend penicillin supply in the past. Love to see your friend on to review. I'll ask Daniel about it, if I remember. Oh, this is very interesting. Ariozone says powassan causes allergy to meat. It's the tick bite that causes allergy to meat. Let's look it up. We did that on TWIP. Causes meat allergy. The Lone Star tick, Emballoma americanum, alpha-gal syndrome. That's what you're talking about. It's caused by the bite of the Lone Star tick. Okay, Eliza's been to Powassan. That's cool. Good for you. And welcome, Ertug from Turkey. Well, we're about to wrap this up here because it is nearly 10 p.m. and I don't like to keep everyone more than 2 hours. So let me thank our moderators tonight for keeping this civil. We had Frank, we had Les, we had Tom, we had Vanity, we had Steph, I believe that's, and Les. Those were our moderators tonight. I'm very grateful to the work that you do to keep people from saying silly things that are offensive. And I appreciate it a lot. And I want to thank everyone for coming. We have 244 people now here. This is great. I love that we're in the 200s. It gives us just enough questions to answer. I appreciate all of the questions, including the virus ones. I try to do as much as I can. So thank you all for coming. When is the next office hours? That is going to be, let me see, make sure it's on my calendar. That will be Wednesday, the 19th of March. So Columbia will be on spring break. So I don't have to worry about rushing home after class. I can get on the train leisurely. So that's when our next office hours is 8 p.m. Come back with your questions if they weren't answered. Thanks for coming, everyone, and thanks for the great conversation. Your questions are great. See you next week. In the meantime, please be safe and sane and exercise critical thinking. Thank you all. Good night.